Right, here we go again. As promised, I'm going to do a very simple picture in oils using just 3 colours. I'm using a very limited palette. I've got titanium white, I've got raw umber, I've got ultramarine blue, as you'll see in the worksheet rather. Right, okay, and I'm going to use a palette knife, just the one. It's already got some white on the back of it. So, mix up some white and some ultramarine. And we'll start, as I usually start, with the sky. What I'm painting on is just a little bit of practice linen from the SAA. It's got a very, very, very faint layer of burnt sienna acrylic paint on it, which I diluted a lot and then wiped off with a cloth, so it's just a stain. I've made sure that that's perfectly dry. The only reason I've used that is purely and simply because it's an old piece of canvas and it had some grubby marks on it, so I covered them up. Okay, this is just underpaint and it's all going to get covered. I've got a bluey bit there. Mix up some white, some more blue, a bit thicker, put in a tiny touch of the raw umber, which will give us a grey colour. I've just dipped my palette knife into some oil. It's my usual mix of alkyd medium and poppy oil, and then that'll stretch it a bit more. And I'm using a palette knife. It's a bit like icing a cake. You just need to put it on, spread it out. There's a slight technique which I'll show you in a minute, but at the moment I just want to cover up as much of the sky as possible. I don't want it too much of a sunny day because this is probably going to be, well, it is going to be sort of Snowdonia-ish. So I've drawn in, I don't know if you can see, some distant mountains, semi-distant mountains, a little bit of a lake and some foreground. Whether I stick to them or not, I don't know, but it's just an idea that I'm working on. I like to have some vague idea, even if it's only whether I'm going to be doing mountains or a beach or something of that ilk. White back in, some cloudiness. If this is Snowdonia, it's almost always cloudy because the mountains are a cloud factory, as in precipitation, warm air rising, cooling, condensing. So therefore we get clouds over high ground, except very occasionally in high summer days. So basically the only 2 colours I've used so far are the white. Oh no, I have put a tiny touch of the raw umber in it, so I've used all 3 colours. I want it to disappear into the distance. So I'll put light across the bottom. Doesn't matter if I go over my furthest mountains. Odd. August Bank Holiday Monday, and I'm sitting here doing this because I can't go out to the beach or anything because I'm locked down again. Sad. Although probably more fun than sitting in a queue on the A55 for 3 hours. So, small mercies. And a tiny bit of the raw umber with the white and blending in some of that grey cloud colour just to get some very distant clouds on the just above the horizon. Now what I'm doing is I'm laying the paint. You see that I've got a roll of paint on the back of the palette knife, and what you do is you roll that on, scrape off the excess from the palette knife so it's more or less clean, and then you just spread it out like buttering bread. But if you don't press very hard at all, you can lay it on top. So at the bottom, see, I'm spreading it out. At the top, I'm leaving it with more texture. I'll put some white clouds in, exactly the same. Roll. Oh, perhaps they're not white clouds. Get a little cloth. Always handy, good practice to wipe the, which I didn't do, which is why I got that big brown mark up there. Okay, back we go, white. And tiny touch of the brown at the base. Give the clouds a little bit of structure. Now you can do this as much or as little as you want, with as much or as little attempt at detail. Now we come to, so there you go, you've got a sky sort of shapes in there. Now in order to put in some aerial perspective, I'm gonna make the furthest hill there very pale grey and getting slightly darker as I come forward. Okay, so starting off with the colour I used for the cloud, which was white, ultramarine tiny touch of raw umber, tiny touch more of raw umber. Now I'm mixing it on my palette. And there is my grey roll. Now, because that's where it joins on there, or roughly there, that's where I put my roll and I drag it down. Doesn't matter if I'm going over the ones in front, I know roughly where they're going to go. That one I've gone over at the top, doesn't matter, just get a tiny splodge of white and take it back the other way. Now there's the furthest hill. The next furthest is that one. So, white, a little bit more blue than last time. And a little bit more umber than last time. Make it a little bit darker. Get me roll on the back, check. There's lots of different colours that roll, so mix it again. There's my roll, not quite darker, so I'll put a little bit more of brown in. And there we are, it's definitely darker now. So again, where I'm going to join in, put my roll along there, spread it down. Now as long as I'm away from that edge, I can go a little bit lighter or a little bit darker, change my colour somewhat as I get further away. Now for this one we need it a little bit brighter coloured. So this time I'm going to start without the blue. I'm going to mix up the brown and the white, lots of white. Now that is not so much darker, it's just warmer because the brown has got a yellow base, so it comes warmer than that bluey grey at the top. Because I've lightened that with the blue at the bottom, we've still got this one coming in front. There. I'll take a little bit more of a lighter which I've got on my palette, and just to highlight that difference there. I'll show, just to highlight the join. Okay, so there we've got. If you think that one's a bit too dark, which it might be, clean off the palette knife, and with the pointy end and a little bit more white, just go into it. And there we go, just to get the tones back. Now that one is definitely a lot further back, it's a lot whiter, a lot paler toned. Right, okay, now as I've got a lake or something here, I'm going to mix up white, just the blue, tiny touch of the umber, and more white on my brush, on my knife. Because it's a bit too dark. Some more white into it. Get a nice straight edge along there. More white. Clean off the knife. That simple. pure white, me roll my white right along that edge. And then pull it down, going through the grey colour and make it a bit bluer, still coming downwards strokes so it looks reflections in there. Now I don't mind going right over this front bit. Okay, there's your water. Now this front bit, I'm going to use the umber and the blue, which makes almost black when you mix them together. Now into that tiny touch of white. All the other mixes I've started off with the white. This one I started off with the brown. Now if I put a straight line along here, it will look as if this is the edge of the lake, and I don't want it particularly to look like the edge of the lake. I want it to look as if we're up another, well, it doesn't matter, it can look like whatever you want it to look, but my original plan was for this to be the top of another mountain looking down, but it doesn't really make any difference, does it? I may change it for this to be a rocky shore. There now, some white, some umber, a lighter colour grey, and put some light into these rocks. Used all my brown. Another squidge, technical term, squidge. I nearly said another technical term when I dropped the lid on the floor, but never mind. I'll pick it up later on. Okay, now I'm putting in almost pure raw umber there. Put some pure blue into it, make some very dark darks in this corner. Just pull out some more light bits on the top of the rocks. There we have a very simple little picture in 3 colours. Okay, nothing brilliant, just showing tonal perspective. A little tricky. While I've got my brush, my thing nice and clean, big fat roll like that, now just with getting the angle right so that that is just touching. Just by dragging the edge along, you can make a nice straight line. Well, you can. I didn't, but again, pull that down. And there you go. Very, very simple, very, very easy to do. Fiddle a bit more, put some lighter colour into these rocks. Because there's more contrast, they look closer. There we go. So that is 3 colours: titanium white, raw umber and ultramarine blue, and we've got a very quick little picture there, which less than half an hour to do. Away you go. Dead simple. Toodly boos.